Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, Torino. Thanks for having us. Good afternoon, Geert Lovink. My name is Della Ratta. I am an associate professor of communications and media studies at John Cabot University in Rome, and a long-time friend and collaborator of Geert Lovink. Hi, Geert. Can you hear us?
Hey, yes, hello.
Yes.
Hi from France. I'm in a residency at Paris at the moment, so this is why I cannot be there, unfortunately, in Torino at the festival. So yeah, I apologize for that.
Yeah, that's too bad. We would have loved to have you in presence, but you were very much with us also in spirit and with your own words, because as we were preparing for this meeting, we played a couple of your songs from Internet Extinction, which is one of the latest essay by Geert. And yeah, so we listen also to your more kind of pop, the pop side of your work, right?
Yeah, sure. And the other song is Copium, which is another essay that was published recently, not yet out, I believe, in Italian, but it is about the question, how do you cope in the time of war and depression? And this is a topic we are going to talk about in the coming hour.
Yes, yes, I believe it's not out yet in Italian, but soon, hopefully, it will be out. And actually, since you mentioned how to cope, which is, I think, a wonderful word to get started, I would like to go straight forward into a topic which is very dear to me to discuss, and I believe it's also very dear to you, because throughout the decades you have been working on producing urgent theory, right? All your work analyzing net art, tactical media, money, cryptocurrencies, platform economy, platform-driven emotions has been marked by an urgency of producing theoretical thinking about this phenomenon. And so today we cannot start but by mentioning the use of technology in the domain of warfare, because as we speak, there are at least two major conflicts, not to mention the other ones that are ongoing, but you know, because we live in a Western-centered society, of course. So those two conflicts are closer to us, and of course I'm referring to Palestine and Ukraine. With regards to Palestine, I have been looking into the use of AI-driven technology to wage war on Gaza, on civilian population. This is a topic that was actually unveiled by brave citizen journalists in Israel and Palestine. Recently, they have been denouncing the use of these systems in basically the last one called Lavender is able to produce items to kill. Items is like people to kill through artificial intelligence. So it's actually, as I call it in my article, it's a killing machine, killing intelligence rather than artificial intelligence. And you have yourself looked at the use of drones and, you know, the whole tech economy surrounding wars, also in Ukraine. Geert has been leading a project with a group of activists called Ukraine TV. So I know that this topic of the use of technology in warfare is very close to your work. So what's your take as we speak?
Well, let's, I would say, dig immediately into the first one and, you know, go and discuss a few of them, because I would like to give you the word, particularly about the first one, about Lavender and AI. And there's that famous piece by the journalists you mentioned. But you and I, we also discussed recently this posting by a person called Paul Biggar, in which he writes about the specific relationship between Meta, also the Facebook company, and this Lavender software, namely through the use of the data that Israeli security forces, Mossad and others would pull out of, let's say, closed WhatsApp groups inside Gaza.
Yes, exactly. I mean, this is actually something very concerning because in the original article about Lavender, produced by Local Call and Plus 972, which are two Israeli NGOs, the role of Meta is not so much analyzed, because the articles do focus mostly on the ways in which the IDF has been using AI to produce a list to kill people and actually then execute them. But the analysis that you have just quoted, I think should make us think even beyond the context of a war zone, because we are using these tools. Meta is a platform that owns Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp. And I'm sure pretty much if I run a poll here in the room, everybody would say that in a way or another, we are using these platforms. The issue at stake is that Meta reportedly gave the IDF access. Of course, Meta is denying, but there are more than just one critical voice raising this concern that Meta might have given the names of people who were in a WhatsApp group very loosely connected to people who are allegedly, this is not proven, Hamas juniors. Yeah, so not even the top executive from Hamas, but just juniors, and it has not been proven that they are part of the organization formally, and yet all the people who were involved in WhatsApp conversations with these people, namely for issues such as the school kids, for example, because I believe here many of us use WhatsApp for communication with the school, with our children, and so basically Lavender works through these names that have been given by Meta. And this is, for me, very concerning, again, not only in a war zone, but also in a civilian setting, because this clearly shows how these companies basically make deals with governments or with other organizations, and we are powerless when it comes to controlling our data. Once we enter in the domain of platform economy and we give up to our freedom, privacy, data production, etc., for the sake of using the app, then basically they can do whatever they want, including, in such a sensitive context such as Gaza, give the names of people who are just members of a WhatsApp group. So I think this is yet another, scandal. Meta is, of course, not new to these scandals, right?
No. Important maybe also here is to demystify the whole notion maybe of Lavender as an AI system. This is pertinently not true. The data are coming from, from WhatsApp groups, at least let's presume that at the moment. And this means that the data comes from social media, not from AI. A lot of people, namely, think, directly or indirectly, intuitively or not, that the AI, whoever or whatever that may be, is generating data. This is not true, right? The data comes from somewhere. And the AI is maybe also, an excuse to say it was not me, it was the AI who did it. It was not me who pushed the button, it was the AI. It was not me who chose the target, it was the AI. And thereby also then leaving out the role of social media that we all use in all this.
Yeah, thanks for clarifying this. Basically, what Geert is talking about is also the ways in which the AI is trained, so the way in which the data set is composed, because the data to train the artificial intelligence comes mostly from grabbing stuff on the internet. So basically, yeah, what we do on social media is constantly recycled without our consent, also to produce these killing machines. And we must be very aware and concerned about the way in which these things are used. I used to be the Creative Commons head of Arabic-speaking community, and so I used to advocate in the Arab board for sharing under flexible copyright. Sharing is caring, and I did believe this was really a mission to make us progress as humanity and to make knowledge a common good. However, I have to say that unfortunately many of the items that have been shared under Creative Commons have been lately used to produce these infamous data sets that are then given to AI to feed repressive systems such as facial surveillance, algorithmic surveillance, and as we are talking also AI in war zones. And on the top of that, I also want to add something on what you said, Geert, about human agency. So the AI as a kind of creating like a sort of a scapegoat when it comes to guilt. It was not me; it was the AI who did it. We identified the target and then shot the person. This idea of automation, which comes embedded with the technology, especially with these new AIs, is even more dangerous when it acts in a context in which the other has already been dehumanized. Because we are talking in the context of Israel-Palestine, let's not forget that there is a dehumanization discourse being put forward by the IDF towards Palestinian people who do not exist. And this is, even Golda Meir, Israel's prime minister, a long time ago, she said, they do not exist. Who? The Palestinians? They do not exist. So I think I want to point out to the fact that when these technologies are used in contexts in which already there is a discourse of dehumanization, they become even more dangerous, because basically, if the other has been already dehumanized, then they can therefore be killed.
Yeah, okay, let's switch now to the situation in Ukraine, which is maybe equally desperate, but the scale is somewhat different. Much larger, much larger territory, a very different population, and a very different situation. But who knows how this is all going to play out. However, from very beginning, I've been interested in the role of drones, because they obviously were used already in early mid-22, 2 years ago, by the Ukrainian side to, let's say, undermine the rather old-fashioned Soviet equipment and approach from the air by very small, self-built, basically adaptations of Chinese consumer software. That was built in the consumer drones. Now, of course, 2 years later, the situation has very, very quickly advanced, and there are a lot of different drones active at the moment. Of course, the famous Iranian drones from the Russian side. There are also now larger kind of missile type Russian drones, and Ukraine has stepped up its own in-house drone production. Ukraine, I would say, still has the advantage of very, very motivated and highly trained people who have really skills in operating these drones. So they also have, of course, an enormous motivation. So there's that difference as well. Together with a Ukrainian scholar, curator, and theorist that is currently with us in Amsterdam at the Institute of Network Cultures. Her name is Ksenia Rybak. I'm doing this research, and she is writing a master thesis about this. And she is in contact with a lot of the male, let's say, drone operators who are at the front, but also ones that are a bit further, that are in Kiev, that build and train. And a lot of them are, in fact, artists. And as you can imagine, there's a strange reversion happening here, because a lot of the young guys who used to waste all their time on video games, remember, all the games they played, all these males, young males who spent hours and hours on Minecraft and God knows what else. They use these skills now to operate the drones. And so this is a very weird reversal, let's say, because it is kind of the revenge of consumer technology, which is quite different from, let's say, the original thesis of a media theorist, German media theorist like Friedrich Kittler, who kind of built his whole career saying that military technology is developed and then later on ends up in the media realm as a consumer product, right? He described this in the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s period when he saw this happening. And right now we are witnessing this very strange reversal where, out of despair, of course, this rather cheap consumer technology is used quite effectively. And it's really a game changer. And especially the US Army is very, very keen on studying this. The Russians, for the time being, they are primarily the victim, of course, although, they have by now changed the balance a little bit. But I would like to remind you also of a rather new phenomena there, which is the drone that cannot really be spotted very well by radar, that has destroyed over water, destroying these huge military boats and from the Russian Navy, which are kind of a boat as a drone, which is again a whole kind of paradigmatic change.
Yeah, thank you. I want to shift slightly now, moving towards like a more like civilian setting, because I think we should talk also about the discriminating algorithms, so the ways in which algorithms are producing injustice, inequalities, and discrimination in not so much in war zones or conflict zones, but also in our civilian setting. And I think there was a scandal erupting in the Netherlands, right, about this discriminating algorithm.
Yeah, true. And the government, one of the Rutte governments, they even fell over this huge scandal. It's about the automation of finding people who are misusing social benefits. Netherlands has quite a complex and rather big system of social benefits, where you can get benefits for healthcare, childcare, to support, paying rent, and so on, right? And so what they did is they trained an algorithm to find these people. And what they started doing is the algorithm not only started finding these people who were misusing these so-called misusing these social benefits, but on top of that, it also started to accumulate the fines up to the point that, after a couple of weeks or months, you would have a fine of €5,000 or 10,000, going to 20 very quickly, bankrupting a lot of people, making them homeless, tearing families apart. And this is a huge and still ongoing scandal. At the moment, we are 2.5 years into it, and 60,000 people have filed complaints about it and will be eligible, to be paid a compensation. And this is an exact, civilian example of what we just discussed before, where it was like, oh, it wasn't me, it was the computer. Somebody wrote the rules for this algorithm. It wasn't me. I couldn't do anything about it, right? This is what the civilian civil servants would argue, even up to members, executive members in the ministries, and ministers themselves, right? They were hiding behind basically what was, of course, an outsourced, IT software firm that wrote this software with enormous political impact. And we could even say that Geert Wilders, the right-wing nationalist, quite comparable to Meloni, or maybe even more radical, who is now the biggest party in the country, and who is about to form a government. Nobody really knows if they're going to succeed. There's negotiating already for 5 months, and it's not really going anywhere. But nonetheless, he was politically benefiting most from this automated algorithm that caused so much damage.
Yeah, I think this is a good example of how this, tech-driven discrimination can actually function in a more like civilian setting within our Western neoliberal democracies. And I'm sure you can think about many other examples, because in our daily life we are increasingly obliged actually to use these tech-driven systems if we want to access healthcare, or put our children at school, or even post-COVID, especially in the post-COVID moment, as we all know, education was pretty marked by this techno-determinism, by the techno-driven moment in which you need to be on a platform if you want to keep going with your own education. You have written extensively about the ways in which platforms kind of orient or even manufacture feelings, right? One of your books is called Sad by Design, in which you argue that actually the feeling of sadness, anxiety, loneliness that many of us feel, if not most of us feel, when we are confronted with doom scrolling, endless notification, the need to react, comment, share, etc. All these, emotions that are generated by living on these platforms are, in fact, emotions designed by the platform infrastructure. I wonder if you would like to talk a little bit more into this topic and describe how it works.
Yeah, important there is, in my understanding, and the way we also work at the Institute of Network Cultures, to see this as a kind of a sad rainbow of feelings, right? Because many people asked, okay, sadness, that's all fine, but I'm not sad. So, it doesn't apply to me. This is not at all the point. Sadness is, for me, an example, quite an interesting one, because it's a rather mild one, right? And it's something that really millions, if not billions, of people experience, especially the way you just described it, Donatella. After long sessions of doom scrolling or trying to keep up, or just those very brief moments when we walk into an elevator or wait in the metro, when we are so-called bored. But then see that we have to, confront ourselves with an enormous amount of updates and things we have to answer, respond to, social obligations, but also, more intimate things, the way we exchange messages with friends, lovers, family, colleagues that are, near to us. It is our social life, after all. This kind of overwhelms us completely. So we need to maybe prevent the chicken and egg question here. Is it the cause of technological circumstances, or just the pressure of work and life in a neoliberal setting where we all have to perform constantly? Donatella, you and I, we have started back in 2017 already with our investigations into the online self, the selfie, and the pressure, to perform already also at that level, at an image and self-image level. And then we continued, of course, our collaboration during COVID with our focus on Zoom fatigue, which is also a chapter in my last book that Nero published in Italian, Paludi della piattaforme. So there we also looked at the impact of this element of overexposure, exhaustion, and long duration, especially the doom scrolling. Look at the pretty confronting statistics of TikTok. But also Instagram, right? Where scrolling 3-4 hours a day seems to be quite normal for young people today. And so this rainbow is important for me because, there are so-called female responses and male responses. Often it is said that males will activate anger and hate, and they're the ones behind hate speech and let's say fake news. And but to be honest, I don't really buy these kinds of distinctions. I see it as an array, as a whole range, let's say, of affects, as the Deleuzians, our Deleuzian friends call it, right? And sometimes they can be relatively harmless, and sometimes also going very, very deep into the medical realm. And with that, of course, I mean depression, and then also burnout. And they have very, very physical, aspects. Even though other people would say, there are also very, long-term physical effects, not moving enough, not feeling healthy enough, not doing sports enough, maybe even up to the changes in the spine of people who are constantly bending over their screens. So there's so many implications, and to be honest, we at the Institute of Network Cultures are interested in all of them, right? And we're very, very interested in the stories that people want to tell about this, and the research that they want to do. Recently, I want to point here also at a triptych, 3 stories that we wrote about so-called girl theory, which is started with the sad girl. The sad girl is already an older phenomena, already known in 2015, 16, 17. Then a new essay about the so-called, the figure of the silly girl, and it closed with a lot of aphorisms and musings on the girl brain. And there's another one coming up about girl math, and so the girl is really, is a kind of already quite an established kind of marketing figure, known to be most on the pulse of the time.
Yeah, thank you for mentioning also this gender aspect. I do agree with you that it's not a matter of strictly like this binarism, male versus females, like those who cope with these emotions or react, with these tech-driven emotions by becoming angry and violent, as opposed to females choosing another path. And I also want to add also some thoughts about generations, like different generations, because usually in most of the literature, we kind of point out to the younger generation because they are digital natives, so they are the most affected by these tech-driven emotions, by anxiety, sadness, etc., that are generated by living daily platformized life. However, I do think that older generations are also affected. As you know, Facebook is becoming, or has become already, a platform mostly for boomers, right? There are so many memes about that.
Yeah, and for the retirement home, yeah.
Yeah. So actually, it's, I think, also unfair to younger people to say that they are the only one addicted to the platform. I mean, this platformized life or condition is an over-encompassing condition that is touching upon all of us. And so I think it's important to realize that this is something across genders, across generations, because it's the result of, as you said, something that happens by design. It's a feature of the interface, not a flaw of the interface. But then,
and recently I've tried to extend that, via the Extinction Internet to essay to the question of coping, but where coping itself kind of becomes one of those gestures, which sounds a bit strange because coping seems in a way so neutral, right? This is the you just try to survive, right? But especially in the last year, I would say the emphasis has really gone into this question of the mental aspects of this survival mode.
Right. Yes, I think it's important also to try, once we have acknowledged that this condition, as you write, you call it techno-destiny. I believe in one of your latest pieces, which appeared actually in Italian a couple of days ago, I think on Repubblica, you call it like our techno-destiny. It's a human condition that is inevitable, right? That unites all of us, right? And so the question of coping with our techno destiny is a question that concerns, right, all of us.
Yeah, and in that latest piece, I'm trying to deal with this very basic, completely unresolved Sherry Turkle paradox, let's say, because she was the one in 2011 that wrote this book about it, Alone Together. We are now 13 years later, and it seems like it's only getting worse. So this is in a way also quite strange, right? Because so many scholars and critics, policy advisors, celebrities, influencers, you name it, right? They have been pointing at all these effects. In this case, for instance, loneliness, right? And somehow the situation gets worse. And I'm kind of, now interested in the long-term effects, what happens when you write, for instance, like me, a book about stuck on the platform and nothing happens, right? People are even more stuck. You come back to the same situation 5 years later, and it's worse. And this was already discussed by Pfaller and Slavoj Žižek and many others around 2017 when they started to discuss this question of regression, where there's no progress anymore at all, where we're basically only going backwards or regressing further, right? But this is very strange because the situation is extremely dynamic, right? Nothing is so dynamic like the internet, like the field of information technology. There's AI and VR and the metaverse and social media, you name it, right? It's just ongoing, right? It's an onslaught. But as a netto effect, people experience this as a regression. And this is and the loneliness example is a prime case because it's so unresolved for us, for the simple fact that if you are on social media and you have hundreds of friends and there are thousands and millions of things you follow and that are happening, it's an ultra meta dynamic space, right? Wendy Chung was there with you. I don't know if she's in the audience, but she has also written about exactly these phenomena. Now, what happens when nothing happens? Yeah. What happens when nothing happens? So, and this is kind of what we need to further investigate. And in Italy, of course, Franco Berardi is doing that in his own way, in his own style, calling for everyone to desert, to leave. This is something, earlier on we also discussed how to unleash this kind of movement that we call exodus. I know it's a biblical term. Maybe we shouldn't. We should maybe find another term for it to come together and leave. Just leave together. Because if you have to do it on your own, it is simply not possible anymore. And this is the case with loneliness as well. How can we be lonely when we are surrounded by hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people? This is such an incredible contradiction.
Yeah. Well, thank you for raising the issue of what's next, because yes, actually the title of this panel is devoted to explore ways of like retaking the internet, you know. So how do we move forward? How do we go beyond the exodus that you have just mentioned, which, yeah, we have been discussing, you and I, about this. I do not believe that the exodus works. It's a very Western idea. Very, you know, white colonial kind of idea, because like my experience, like living for many decades in the Middle East, is that people do need internet for many, many things in their daily life. So they simply do not have the option of doing what we call so glamorously detox. Right? They simply do not have the option of digital detox. So maybe Exodus is not an option, because basically it doesn't cover the majority of the world, the global south, or as they call it now, the global majority. But also because even within our Western neoliberal democracies, I don't know how many people are ready to actually exit these platforms, simply because they are increasingly embedded in our daily life. Like in the examples we mentioned before, like if you need a platform to access healthcare or school for your children, how can you opt out? You know, so this is really a serious problem, right? So maybe no exodus, and I know that you also do not believe in digital detox, right? You talk about digital detox in many essays. Maybe you can say something about this, because it's kind of like fashionable, and also people pay a lot to do digital detox. There are trainers also, right?
Yeah.
There are people who actually ask for thousands and thousands of euros just to coach you about how to do the digital detox for a couple of days and live, you know, healthy life, do yoga. And then, of course, on the Monday when you come back from your detox weekend, then you have to restart to be productive, which means to be connected once more, right? So no exodus, no detox. But so,
still, you know, from the European perspective, because you're right about you know, the digital majority, and for them, and this is simply not an option. And by the way, for many hundreds of millions in Europe, it's pretty much similar, right? They are also they have to cope with coordinating a very busy life, maybe having 2 jobs. They cannot pay the rent anymore. So the situation is just becoming more dire, right? And if that's the case, there is more to be coordinated. You have to juggle more, basically. You're sitting in a traffic jam. Some system that you're using is collapsing. There's a climate catastrophe happening, which means you know, that vital services will, at least temporarily, be out of service. So you name it, there are you know, obstacles in which the digital coordination of busy lives, to be in contact and coordinate lives, for instance, children, childcare, caring for elderly, or friends, lovers, whoever is around, right? Yeah, so the question then is, if the detox or the exodus is not working the way, you know, we envisioned it already back in 2010 and 11, when this critique of the social media and the building of social media alternatives started, right? It's always shocking for me to realize, right? This is this rant of us here is already, you know, going on for 12 years, basically. What kind of a desperation is that? But at least, you know, we can think of, you know, for instance, in the European context, on political demands. We can develop alternatives, and we can develop political demands. Would that mean, let's say, the socialization of data centers? Would it mean, the splitting up of large companies? How can social media, for instance, be reprogrammed in such a way that they are maybe at least less driven by data extractivism and all its mental, disastrous effects that this extractivism is causing. So, let's at least expand the options that are on the table for us. Another one, that people in the Netherlands and Germany also work on is this very old question of internet as a public infrastructure. Is that viable in a time when there's more and more right-wing nationalism, so these are the discussions for me that are on the table. At the moment, we see AI as a giant distraction of this. So most of the more critical and intelligent people that we know, maybe even you and I, Donatella, they've of course moved on and started to work on all the urgent issues in the field of AI, because obviously the whole social media question and the question of platforms, remained unresolved.
Yes, right. And, also I like the slogan of this Biennale, which is Tecnologia è umanità. Technology is humanity. So without using and technology and humanity, but kind of putting the accent on the fact that technology is humanity, is deeply embedded with humanity. And I think we have touched upon some of the issues in which technology is, of course, heavily determined by humans. We should not forget this, we should not forget that we should, there are several ways of going when it comes to having models for building technology. And you have mentioned that, for example, in the case of AI and platform economy in general, there would be other ways rather than just extractivism to build a viable, AI. For example, there are a duo of artists, Salvatore Iaconesi and Oriana Persico, two Italian brilliant artists. Unfortunately, Salvatore passed away 2 years ago, but Oriana is still there, and she's working a lot on relational AI, So AI which uses relational models in order to be built instead of using extractivist models. So instead of predating data without consent or problematic data that then is reused to surveil and oppress people, she's trying to find other ways to build AI. So I think it's important that we remember that what we have today is just one option. It's an accident of history. It's not the only way to go. And we should not, put limits on our imaginations, because otherwise I think this is also suggested in the blurb of this meeting, that imagination is still something that can save us from many things, right? Including this loneliness, anxiety, and exhaustion that you are mentioning in your books.
Anyway, I hope the audience,
yes.
by the way, is enjoying the memes. It's one of my my hobbies that I produce these ones, theory memes. I don't know. It's is it a genre or not? I don't know. But anyway, there's a certain relief or pleasure in producing and collecting them. So let's turn to the audience now and see if there's some.
Yeah, I'm gonna ask in Italian. Ci sono domande nel pubblico? Vorrebbe sapere se qualcuno vuole chiedere qualcosa. Sì, mi puoi dare il microfono?
In Italian, please.
Ok, ho fatto recentemente un dibattito su questo argomento. Pensi che l'uso di predictive algorithm sia un problema riguardante i social media, che potrebbe essere quello il motivo della dipendenza?
Did you hear the question? Do you want me to translate it?
Yeah, I understand. Predictive algorithms, they're not, dominating the social media yet. We could say that these social spaces will even become more dead when predictive AI is taking over. People have no idea anymore, who they're talking to or who has written what. This was already, of course, the case with news bots, which have been around for decades. So the problem that you are raising, I don't see it as a possibility, but the problem of further going into a nihilist direction, right? It is mass nihilism that we are embarking upon if we can no longer distinguish between an AI and a friend on the social media. It could also mean that the AI, that would be ideal in a way if they would completely overgrow and kill the whole social media phenomena itself, right? That would be my dream. That would be a dream come true. But it also would mean that for billions of people, these media will be rendered completely useless. And we need to understand, as we discussed here, in regards to a very necessary coordination of the very busy social life people have, what exactly this means.
Thank you. Altre domande? Sì, puoi dare il microfono.
Should I go in Italian or English?
Up to you.
Ok, I will go in Italian. Ultimamente mi sono informato riguardo dell'argomento anche per delle cose che abbiamo organizzato dentro la scuola e mi sono ritrovato spesso a dover avere a che fare con l'indifferenza, nel senso, quando si va a parlare di queste cose e si fa, si mostra quello che è questo lato della realtà e in generale si fa divulgazione, come si riesce ad avere a che fare con l'indifferenza quando non si riescono a prendere l'attenzione delle altre persone e non si riesce a fargli capire l'importanza del messaggio?
Such a big question.
Well, for me, it's very simple. Work with people, come together, try to, use the tools, the technological tools that we have, precisely for the coordination of work, pleasure, and fun. But try to build a social life outside of that, and try to work on projects that have a very clear purpose and urgency, and then you will very quickly find out that the culture of indifference will absolutely evaporate. I wouldn't say overnight, but you will become definitely less interested in it. So this is a very simple but quite radical recipe, and we try to do this also at the Institute of Natural Cultures, of course ourselves, and if possible even limit virtual interactions. This is why I'm so ashamed that I have to talk to you at this moment in Torino through this virtual software. I apologize for that again.
I just want to add one thing to this, because this question really touches me a lot as I teach at university. So my students have 20, 22, and most of the time when I teach classes that deal with digital media culture and even AI, I am confronted with indifference because the younger generation looks at me, stares at me, kind of saying, so what? It is what it is, as a popular meme says. So why are you lecturing us about this? And I find that the only way to, at least, because it's a difficult question, thanks for raising it, my only tool so far, the only tool that worked so far, besides what Geert said, because of course the most important thing is always to do stuff that is not virtual, that is physical, that is embodied, that is situated. But also I discovered that what works is to give examples in which they are, examples that touch them in their daily life. For example, when I told them, we were talking about how the AI is using data sets that results from grabbing data onto the internet without consent and privacy. And they were looking at me with the so what kind of gaze. And I said, oh, look at this project, which is basically by an American artist. His name is Adam Harvey. It's pretty remarkable because he has unveiled many training data sets from AI. And many of them are actually, mostly in the US, made by taking feeds from, let's say, the CCTV cameras that are everywhere in American universities. So the students, and I teach in an American university, realized that their daily life on campus was being used by the AI, to train the AI, without their consent. And then there was another database in which all the papers that they authored were stored in the university database, and the university sold the database to these companies, and so therefore, they understand how the oppression works. They feel violated because it's their papers, because it's their images, and all of a sudden, a topic that is so abstract, exploited workers, blah blah blah, becomes touchable and embodied. So for me, this is the only thing that worked out so far. And I think, actually, I don't know if there is just one quick question, because I think we have to close. No, I think we have to close, actually. It's 4. I'm told that Turin is pretty strict. It's not like Rome. So, Geert, thank you so much for joining us, and next time, hopefully in person. And thanks all of you for being with us today. Grazie alla Biennale.